When I first walked through the doors of the nursing home, I told myself, this is going to be fine. My children assured me I was making the right choice. The brochures showed happy seniors playing cards, smiling nurses assisting residents, and well-kept gardens where people strolled peacefully. It looked like a retirement dream. But what I didn't know was that the version of a nursing home I had in my mind, the one filled with warmth, personal care, and dignity, was just an illusion. And once I stepped inside, that illusion shattered quickly. Most nursing homes market themselves as places of care, companionship, and safety. Families are told that their loved ones will be well taken care of, with access to medical support, engaging social activities, and nutritious meals. The reality is often much different. The facility itself. When I toured the home, they showed me a clean, spacious private room. But when I moved in, I was given a small, shared room with a thin curtain separating me from my roommate, who groaned in his sleep every night. The medical care they promised. I was told there would be nurses on call 24/7 to assist me. But when I pressed the call button for help getting to the bathroom one night, I waited 42 minutes before someone arrived. The activities that were supposed to keep me engaged. The schedule listed events like movie night and trivia games. But when I arrived, I found that most activities were poorly attended and barely organized. I had expected a place that felt like a second home. What I got was an institution, one that operated on strict schedules, under-trained staff, and policies designed for efficiency, not dignity. One of the biggest reasons nursing homes fail their residents isn't because they don't care. It's because they don't have the resources to care properly. Understaffing is a crisis. The recommended staff-to-resident ratio for quality care is 1 nurse for every 5 residents. Many nursing homes operate with 1 nurse for every 15 to 20 residents, sometimes even worse. What does this mean for people like me? It means waiting, neglect, and sometimes even suffering. One night, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. I wasn't strong enough to get up by myself, so I pressed the call button. I waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20. The pressure in my bladder became unbearable. Finally, after nearly an hour, a nurse rushed in, breathless. "Sorry," she said. "We're short-staffed tonight." That was the moment I realized I wasn't a priority here. I was just another task on a long list. Many people don't realize this, but most nursing homes aren't run by caregivers. They're run by corporations. And corporations have one goal: profit. Where the money goes, the average cost of a private nursing home room is $9,000 per month. Most of that money doesn't go to hiring better staff or improving facilities. It goes to administrators, shareholders, and executive bonuses. Instead of focusing on care, many nursing homes focus on cost-cutting, reducing staff, cutting food budgets, and minimizing medical treatments to maximize profit. Another thing they don't tell you, the food in nursing homes is terrible. The meals are often low in nutrients and high in preservatives. Fresh fruit and vegetables are rare. Residents with dietary restrictions are often given unappetizing, poorly prepared substitutes. A memory that still haunts me. On my 3rd day, I was served something they called chicken casserole. It looked like mush, smelled like salt, and tasted like cardboard. I forced myself to eat because I was hungry, but I couldn't help but wonder, was this my life now? Eating factory-produced food on a plastic tray. The worst part isn't the bad food or the long wait times. It's the realization that you are no longer in control of your own life. The daily routine becomes a prison. Wake-up time, set by the facility. Meal times, set by the facility. Visiting hours, set by the facility. One morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., unable to sleep. I wanted to make myself a cup of tea, something I had done every morning for decades. But there was no kitchen, no access to hot water, no way to make a simple cup of tea without asking permission. That was when I truly understood. This wasn't a home. It was a system, and I was just another person following its rules. If I could go back in time, I would have done everything possible to avoid moving into a nursing home. I would have explored home care options. I would have asked my family about alternatives. I would have prepared better. The biggest lesson I've learned? Once you give up control over your own life, it's hard to get it back. And that's something no one warns you about before you move in. In the next chapter, I'll talk about something even harder, what it truly feels like to lose your independence, and why, once you do, it changes everything. There are moments in life when you realize you're no longer in control. For me, that moment came 3 weeks after I moved into the nursing home. I woke up that morning like I always did, slowly, stretching my legs, adjusting to the day. At home, I would have gotten up, made myself a cup of coffee, and read the newspaper in my favorite chair. But here I had to wait. I had to wait for someone to help me get dressed, wait for someone to bring my breakfast, wait for someone to tell me what the day's schedule would be. My time was no longer my own. And that's when it hit me. I had lost something that I never thought I would lose: my independence. When you live in a nursing home, every part of your day is dictated by someone else. You don't get to decide when you wake up, when you eat, or even when you go to sleep. Everything runs on a strict schedule, not because it's better for you, but because it's easier for them. A typical day in a nursing home: 6:30 a.m., wake-up call, whether you want to wake up or not. 7 a.m., breakfast, whether you're hungry or not. 9 a.m., recreational time, even if you'd rather be alone. 12 p.m., lunch, same meal options every week. 2 p.m., mandatory rest time, because that's how they manage schedules. 6 p.m., dinner, too early, but you have no choice. 9 p.m., lights out, even if you're still awake. I was no longer living life, I was just existing inside a system that decided everything for me. The worst part? There was no room for change. If you tried to fight the routine, you were labeled difficult. At home, I could eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Here, I had 2 choices: eat what they served or go hungry. What nursing home food is really like: bland, mass-produced meals with little seasoning. The same meal rotation every week. Limited choices, especially if you have dietary restrictions. No option to cook for yourself. One evening, I asked if I could get a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich instead of the processed meatloaf they were serving. The nurse sighed and said, "We can't accommodate special requests." I wasn't asking for a gourmet meal, just something I actually wanted to eat. It wasn't just the food. It was the little things. I wanted to go for a walk outside one afternoon, but I was told I needed a staff member to accompany me. I wanted to stay up late and watch a movie, but the TV in the common room was turned off at 9 p.m. I wanted to shower in the morning, but my assigned bath time was in the evening. Every single choice I once had was gone. Imagine being 80 years old and having to ask permission to go outside. Imagine wanting a cup of tea and needing someone else to decide if you can have it. Imagine having to plan your day around when someone is available to help you, rather than when you actually want to do things. That's what it's like to live in a nursing home. You don't make choices, you ask for permission. And sometimes that permission is denied. The frustration of waiting. Waiting for a nurse to help you to the restroom. Waiting for someone to adjust your pillow. Waiting for staff to bring your medication. Waiting to be allowed outside. One day I wanted to sit in the garden. It was a warm spring afternoon, the kind of day I used to love back when I lived in my own house. I asked a staff member if I could go outside, and she said, "We're short on staff right now. Maybe later." I never got to go outside that day, and that's when I realized I wasn't just losing my independence. I was losing my connection to life itself. There's something dehumanizing about how you're spoken to in a nursing home. It's not that the staff are cruel. It's just that over time, they stop seeing you as an adult with a full life behind you. Instead, they start treating you like a child who needs to be managed. Common phrases you hear in a nursing home: "It's time for bed now." "Eat your food. It's good for you." "You don't need to worry about that, dear. Let's get you changed. We'll do that for you." Every time someone spoke to me like that, I felt a little piece of myself disappear. I had lived through wars, built a family, worked hard for decades, only to end up being spoken to like I was 5 years old. Losing independence doesn't just affect your body, it affects your mind. When you no longer have control over your life, you start to lose the will to fight for it. Depression sets in. Many residents stop engaging with the world because they feel like they don't matter anymore. Cognitive decline accelerates. Studies show that loss of independence is linked to faster memory loss and dementia. You start feeling like a burden. When every decision about your life is made by others, you stop believing that your opinions or desires matter. If I had known how much independence I would lose in a nursing home, I would have done everything in my power to stay in my own home for as long as possible. I would have looked at in-home care options, considered moving in with family, or explored community living. Anything but this. Because once you lose your independence, getting it back is nearly impossible. And that's something no one warns you about before you move in. And now I'll talk about something even more difficult, the emotional and psychological impact of loneliness in a nursing home. And why, for many, that loneliness becomes unbearable. When people talk about nursing homes, they usually focus on safety, medical care, and companionship. But they rarely talk about the cost until it's too late. And trust me, when the bills start arriving, you realize very quickly that nursing homes aren't just about care. They're about business. Before I moved in, my family and I thought we had everything planned out. We assumed Medicare would cover most of the costs. We assumed there wouldn't be too many extra fees. We assumed we had enough saved. But we were wrong. No one ever told me that living in a nursing home would drain my savings faster than I ever imagined. The average cost of a private nursing home room in the U.S. is $9,000 per month. A semi-private room costs around $7,500 per month. That's $90,000 to $110,000 per year, more than most people's retirement savings. I thought my retirement savings would last for the rest of my life. I was wrong. Within 2 years, the nursing home had drained nearly everything I had worked for. I was forced to rely on my children for financial support, something I had sworn I would never do. Many seniors assume that Medicare will cover their nursing home expenses. It won't, at least not in the way you think. What Medicare actually covers. Medicare only pays for short-term stays, up to 100 days, after a hospitalization. It does not cover long-term nursing home stays. Once the 100 days are up, you're responsible for the full cost, out of pocket. When my Medicare coverage ran out, I was left staring at a bill I couldn't afford. And then I learned the next hard truth. If you can't pay, you have 2 choices. Spend down your savings until you qualify for Medicaid, or leave. Medicaid will cover nursing home costs only if you have very few assets left. To qualify, you must spend down almost all of your savings, often leaving you with no money for anything else. Many seniors are forced to sell their homes, cash out their retirement accounts, and give up their financial independence just to qualify. It's a cruel system. You either lose everything or you lose your place in the nursing home. The base cost of a nursing home is already high, but what they don't tell you is how many extra fees they'll charge you along the way. Common hidden fees in nursing homes. Medication management fee $300 to $1,000 per month. Personal care assistance $500 to $1,500 per month. Physical therapy sessions $100 to $300 per session. Laundry service fee $100 to $300 per month. Special dietary needs fee $150 to $500 per month. A personal story. The extra charges I didn't expect. 1 month. I noticed my bill was nearly $500 higher than usual. When I asked why, they told me I had been charged for extra assistance with mobility, but I hadn't received any extra help. When I pushed back, they said it was a standard policy update. In other words, they were charging me for something I didn't ask for, and I had no way to fight it. When seniors can't afford their nursing home costs, the burden often falls on their families. And that burden can be crushing. How nursing home costs impact families. Adult children often have to step in financially, delaying their own retirement. Many families take out loans or use credit cards to cover care costs. Some are forced to sell their parents' home to afford the bills. In extreme cases, families face financial ruin just trying to keep their loved one in care. A family's story. I remember the night my daughter called me, crying. She had just realized that she would have to put her own house up for sale to cover my nursing home costs. "Dad," she said, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just losing my money. I was dragging my family down with me. If I had known what I know now, I would have explored every alternative before moving into a nursing home. Because the truth is, there are better, more affordable options. 1. Aging in place with in-home care. Hiring a home health aide can cost $25 to $30 per hour, which is far cheaper than a nursing home. Many seniors only need a few hours of assistance per day, significantly lowering costs. 2. Assisted living facilities. Assisted living is often cheaper than a nursing home for $1,000 to $6,000 per month instead of $9,000 to $10,000. These facilities offer more independence while still providing care when needed. 3. Moving in with family. Some families choose multi-generational living, which can save tens of thousands of dollars per year. Home modifications like stair lifts, wheelchair ramps, can make it easier for seniors to live at home. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't have moved into a nursing home so quickly. I would have looked at other options. I would have fought to stay in my home for as long as possible. Because once you move in, once the bills start piling up, once your savings disappear, you realize that you're not just paying for care. You're paying for control over your own life. And in the end, you're paying with everything you have. In the next chapter, I'll talk about the emotional and psychological cost of nursing home life, the loneliness, the isolation, and why so many residents feel forgotten. There's a kind of loneliness that's hard to describe. One that doesn't come from being alone, but from being surrounded by people who don't really see you. That's the kind of loneliness I felt in the nursing home. At first, I thought I would adjust. I thought I would make friends, get used to the new routine, and feel like I belonged. But as the days turned into weeks, I realized something. It wasn't just me who felt this way. Almost everyone around me was trapped in the same kind of quiet sadness. Loneliness in a nursing home isn't just about missing your family. It's about feeling like you've disappeared from the world. And the worst part? The world doesn't even notice. Before moving in, I was told that I would be part of a community. The brochures showed seniors laughing together, playing games, sharing meals. It looked like a place where friendships would come easily. But what I found was very different. Why real friendships are rare in nursing homes. Many residents are in different stages of health. Some are mentally sharp, while others suffer from dementia or cognitive decline, making deep conversations difficult. Most people have already lost many close friends before moving in, and forming new bonds at this stage of life isn't easy. Social activities are often shallow and repetitive, failing to create genuine connections. A personal story, the failed social hour. I remember the first time I tried to join a group activity. It was game night, but when I arrived, I found a group of people sitting around a table, barely speaking. Some stared blankly, others didn't seem to remember how to play. A staff member led the game, speaking to us like we were children. I sat there for a few minutes, then quietly got up and left. I never went back. That was the night I realized that loneliness in a nursing home isn't about being physically alone. It's about feeling unseen, unheard, and unimportant. When you first move into a nursing home, your family visits often. They check in, they bring you small gifts, they sit and talk with you. But over time, life gets busy. The visits become less frequent. The calls become shorter. And one day you realize you've been forgotten. Why family visits fade over time. Life goes on. Children, grandchildren, and loved ones have their own responsibilities, jobs, and families to care for. Guilt and discomfort. Some family members avoid visiting because it's too painful to see their loved one in decline. Distance. Many families live far away, making frequent visits difficult. Assumption of good care, or some believe that because their loved one is in a nursing home, they don't need as much attention. A memory that still hurts. One Sunday, I sat by the window, waiting for my daughter. She had promised she would come for lunch. I dressed up, combed my hair, and waited by the front lobby. Hours passed. She never came. No call. No message. Later, I found out she got caught up in errands and forgot. She said she'd come next weekend. But that weekend turned into the next and then the next. And soon, visits became something I hoped for, rather than something I could count on. Loneliness isn't just sad, it's dangerous. Studies have shown that social isolation increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, and dementia. People who are lonely are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and even die earlier than those who remain socially connected. The science of loneliness and health decline. Loneliness increases the risk of death by 26%. Isolated seniors are 50% more likely to develop dementia. Chronic loneliness can weaken the immune system, making people more susceptible to illness. People think the biggest health risks in a nursing home are falls, infections, or medical neglect. But the truth is, one of the most dangerous things in a nursing home is loneliness. The staff try, they really do, but they're overworked, exhausted, and stretched too thin to provide the kind of companionship residents truly need. Why staff are limited in offering emotional support. Most nursing homes have too few staff members per resident, leaving little time for personal interactions. Caregivers are trained to provide physical assistance, not deep emotional support. The constant turnover of staff makes it difficult to build long-term relationships. A conversation I'll never forget. One of the nurses, Sarah, was kind. She always smiled, always asked how I was doing. But one evening, as she handed me my medication, she sighed and said, "I wish I had more time to sit and talk with you, but I have 15 more patients to check on before my shift ends." That's when I realized nursing home staff aren't just overworked, they're drowning. And no matter how much they care, they simply don't have time to fill the loneliness that exists here. If I had known how isolating a nursing home could be, I would have fought harder to stay connected to the people I love. I would have made sure my family had a plan to visit regularly. I would have asked friends to call, to write, to stay in my life. Because once you enter a nursing home, the world you knew starts slipping away. And if you're not careful, one day you wake up and realize you're truly alone. In the next chapter, I'll talk about one of the most shocking realities of nursing homes, how overmedication and neglect have become common ways to control residents, and why, for many, it's not their illness that takes them, it's the system itself. I used to believe that nursing homes were places of care, that every resident would receive the attention they needed, that medical staff would be diligent, and that our well-being would be a top priority. But it didn't take long for me to learn that, for many residents, medications weren't about treatment, they were about control. It started subtly. A sleeping pill here, a mild sedative there. At first, I thought it was just routine care, something to help me adjust to my new environment. But then I started noticing things. I wasn't the only one taking medications I hadn't asked for. Other residents, many of whom had once been lively, engaging people, began to change. They moved slower, spoke less, and their eyes seemed glazed over, distant. I didn't understand what was happening at first. Then, one evening, I overheard a nurse talking to another staff member. "She keeps wandering at night," the nurse said. "Let's up her dose. That'll keep her calm." And just like that, I realized the truth. Nursing homes are supposed to be places of care, but for many residents, medication isn't about improving health. It's about making them easier to manage. Instead of providing the attention and assistance that residents need, many facilities rely on sedatives, antipsychotics, and sleeping pills to keep people quiet, compliant, and easy to control. One of the most common drugs used in nursing homes is antipsychotics. These medications are meant for people with serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia or severe bipolar disorder. But in many nursing homes, they're given to residents who don't need them, simply to make them more docile. Studies have shown that nearly 1 in 5 nursing home residents is prescribed antipsychotic medication, even if they don't have a condition that warrants it. These drugs cause drowsiness, confusion, and even increase the risk of death in elderly patients. And yet, they are used regularly, often without proper consent. I remember meeting a woman named Alice. She was 87 years old, sharp as a tack, and full of stories about her life. In the first few weeks after I arrived, we would sit together in the common area, talking about everything from history to our favorite books. She had a wit that made me laugh, a warmth that made me feel less alone. Then, one day, Alice was different. She wasn't as talkative. Her hands trembled slightly, and her speech was slower. I asked her what was wrong, and she just shook her head, saying she felt tired. Over the next few weeks, I watched as she declined. She stopped coming to the common area as often. When she did, she sat in silence, her eyes unfocused. Eventually, she needed help just to get to her seat. One night, I overheard a conversation between a nurse and another resident's family member. She was getting agitated in the evenings, the nurse explained. The doctor prescribed something to help calm her down. Alice was being medicated into submission. Many nursing home employees are underpaid and overworked. With too many residents to care for and not enough staff to provide personalized attention, some facilities turn to medication as a way to manage behavior, instead of addressing the real causes of restlessness, anxiety, or agitation, such as loneliness, discomfort, or medical issues. Staff members often resort to medication to keep residents easier to handle. The justification is simple. It's more efficient. When a resident is constantly pressing the call button, asking to go outside, or struggling with sleep, giving them a sedative is an easy solution. But it's not a solution at all. It's a form of neglect. Once a resident is medicated, they lose more than just their restlessness. They lose their clarity, their independence, their ability to advocate for themselves. I started to wonder, how many of us were being medicated for convenience, rather than necessity? It's easy to dismiss medication as harmless, but the consequences can be severe. Over-medication can lead to falls and injuries. Sedatives and antipsychotics cause dizziness, increasing the risk of falls. Many residents who were once able to walk independently become wheelchair-bound after being put on unnecessary medication. Memory loss and cognitive decline. Long-term use of certain medications can accelerate dementia symptoms, even in people who were once mentally sharp. Increased risk of death. Studies have shown that elderly patients who take unnecessary antipsychotics have a higher mortality rate than those who don't. I saw these effects firsthand. Alice wasn't the only one. Others who had once been alert and engaged started spending more time in their rooms, staring blankly at the walls, unable to hold conversations. They weren't living anymore. They were existing in a medicated fog. Overmedication is just one form of neglect in nursing homes. Another is the simple lack of attention to basic needs. I remember one morning, I pressed the call button because I needed help getting to the bathroom. 20 minutes passed, then 40. Finally, after nearly an hour, a staff member arrived. "I'm sorry," she said. "We're short-staffed today." The reality is they were short-staffed every day. Many nursing homes operate with far fewer staff members than they should. The recommended ratio is 1 nurse for every 5 to 7 residents, but in many places, it's closer to 1 nurse for every 15 to 20 residents, sometimes worse. The result? Residents left in soiled clothes for hours. Meals delivered late, sometimes cold. Medications given in a rush, without explanation. Call buttons ignored or forgotten. Some days, I saw residents fall asleep in their wheelchairs because no one had the time to help them into bed. Others sat in their rooms, calling out for assistance that never came. Neglect doesn't always mean outright abuse. Sometimes it's just the absence of care. And that absence is enough to destroy a person's dignity. Mr. Thompson was 92 years old. He had served in the military, raised 3 children, and lived a life full of adventure. But in the nursing home, he was just another resident. He had trouble feeding himself, so he relied on staff to help him eat. Some days, they were too busy, and his meal would sit untouched on the tray until it was taken away. One evening, I heard him coughing violently in his room. I pressed the call button for him. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I walked to the nurse's station and told them he needed help. "We're finishing med rounds," one of them said. "We'll check on him soon." By the time someone arrived, he had already developed aspiration pneumonia from choking on his own saliva. He died 3 days later, and just like that, he was gone. Many nursing homes aren't designed to provide the care they promise. They are businesses first, places of care second. Understaffing, overmedication, and neglect aren't accidents. They are the result of a system that prioritizes profits over people. The more residents a nursing home can take in, the more money they make. The fewer staff they hire, the lower their labor costs. And when medication can replace hands-on care, it becomes a cost-effective solution. But at what cost? If I had known how common overmedication and neglect were in nursing homes, I would have asked more questions. I would have made sure my family was involved in my care, monitoring what medications I was given and why. I would have spoken up sooner, before it was too late. Because once you lose your voice in a nursing home, it's hard to get it back. Overmedication isn't care. Neglect isn't an accident. And if you or a loved one is considering a nursing home, you need to ask yourself one question. Who will be there to make sure you're truly being cared for?